Side 7, Xone of Contention, by Piers Anthony. Continuing on page 215.
When you enter Xanth, Gray said, you speak the human dialect of Xanth. All people do, whatever their original language is. It happens automatically. It is part of the magic of Xanth.
It's true, Brianna said. It happened to all the members of the Black Wave when we came to Xanth. When you try to talk across the magic boundary, it's like gibberish.
Edsel was as surprised as Pia.
We were never aware of any change. There is no need to be, Gray said. But when Robata and I pass through Mundania, we will not be intelligible and will need to handle the local dialects.
I will translate for you, Robata said, and speak for you using your voice.
Fortunately, we won't be there long, Gray said. Why go there at all? Edsel asked. I thought you were to travel back in time. Gray smiled. That is the most convenient way it is done. The interface between Xanth and Mundania is temporal as well as spatial. We shall leave in our present time and re-enter in the time of the Storm King. Robata is attuned to the key times.
This is weird, Pia said.
But feasible, the screen printed. Like the adult conspiracy, Brianna muttered.
So what do we two observers do? Edsel asked.
You will be made comfortable here, Tristan said. Pewter will provide for any special needs you have. Simply tell me, and it will be arranged.
My credulity is straining, Pia said. I think I'd like to go home.
Tristan didn't blink. Describe your home. Justin smiled.
You will like this.
Well, it's a garden variety house, Pia said. We each have an office, so I can do the accounts and he can do the programming without getting in each other's way. We have colored carpeting on the floors and pictures on the walls.
She continued to describe their house in greater detail, evidently feeling nostalgia.
Edsel noticed what she did not. As she spoke, the house was forming around them. She hadn't clarified that their two offices were in different rooms, so here they were side by side, alcoves in the same room, but otherwise correctly appointed. There were pictures of flowers and lakes by her desk, and pictures of his lemon motorcycle by his desk, plus a sexy pin-up calendar. Pia finally noticed. Yes, that's it, in a way, she said. But it's all illusion, of course.
No, this is temporary reality, Tristan said. This is my master's power.
And it's some power, Brianna said. Reality? Of course not, Pia said. She walked to her desk and slapped at the chair, probably expecting her hand to pass through without resistance. Instead, it struck the chair. She stared. Then she touched the desk more carefully. Then she lifted a picture from the wall.
It's real.
For sure. I told you.
Edsel walked to his section. His things were real, too. He tried to modify it using his magic talent, but nothing happened. Ordinary magic cannot overrule magician-caliber magic, Tristan said. Computer is supreme in this cave, except for Magician Gray, of course. But if you wish anything changed...
No, this is just fine, Pia said. It really is pretty much like home.
Then perhaps we should begin, Gray said.
If the two of you will touch the two of them, the connection will be established, Tristan said to Edsel and Pia.
Wait, Pia cried, alarmed. Do we lose our souls or something?
I assure you this is not the case, Tristan said. This is merely a link between you, so that the two observers will always know what the subjects are experiencing.
And do they also know what we're doing? Pia asked sharply.
No, this is one way only. My master has been as yet unable to develop the magic required for two-way temporal communication.
That's a relief, Pia said.
Edsel agreed, though he didn't say so. They went to stand before Gray and Robata. Edsel extended his hand to Gray, and Pia extended hers to Robata. When Edsel's fingers touched Gray's, he felt an electric tingle. That was all.
That's it?
Pia asked, sounding almost disappointed. Close your eyes and look, Tristan said. Edsel closed his eyes and tried to see. He saw himself standing there with his eyes shut. Startled, he opened his eyes, and for a moment suffered a double image. Then the view of himself faded, and his vision was normal again. "I was seeing through your eyes," he said to Gray. "Yes, the magic sends to you. Then you can tell computer, especially when there is anything alarming." "I don't like to ask this question," Edsel said, "but I think I must. Suppose you die?" Gray smiled. "That is unlikely in Xanth because of my magic, and Robata, of course, can't die, though she could be destroyed. But it is possible in Mundania, and I admit I am nervous about that aspect of our journey. If it happens, your awareness will go blank. Then I regret that it will fall to you to advise the others." "Advise me," Tristan said. "I will advise the others." "I hope that doesn't happen," Edsel said. "This is becoming much more serious than I expected." "We believe that the mission can be safely accomplished," Tristan said. "In any event, there is no personal risk to the two of you. It would not be ethical to subject you to that." "Yet you are subjecting Xanth to the risk of serious change." Gray gave him a straight look. "Not if you are sufficiently vigilant." Edsel shut up. He would do his best, though he sincerely hoped that nothing went wrong. His knees felt a bit weak. Computer's screen lighted. "Do it." Gray nodded. "Perhaps I should carry you at this stage, Robata." "Yes." Gray picked up the golem and tucked her into a shirt pocket. He turned to the exit tunnel. He took several steps, then paused, turning back. "If I discover a problem I don't believe we can handle, I will signal you like this." He lifted his two hands in a gesture as of prayer. "That will mean to send help." "If we see that, we'll tell Tristan," Edsel agreed, "but I sincerely hope it's not necessary." "I hope so too," Tristan said, "because I am the one who will have to go there, and I do not feel competent as a troll." "I know the feeling, as a mundane," Edsel said. Gray turned again and walked on out of the cave. Edsel, suddenly uncertain about the connection, closed his eyes and concentrated. He saw a light growing and realized that it was at the end of the tunnel. It was the opening, as Gray approached it. Then daylight was around him. "The connection is working," he said, relieved as he opened his eyes. "I know," Piers said. Edsel closed his eyes again and found his vision sailing up into the sky. He stumbled, almost falling, until someone steadied him. It was Brianna. "Something's wrong," he said. "For sure. I hope you're not sick." "Perhaps you are seeing the invisible giant picking them up for transport," Tristan said. Oh, Edsel felt foolish. "Yes, I forgot about the giant." "Perhaps it would be easier if you retired to your office and sat down," Tristan suggested. Edsel was feeling giddy. "Yes, Gray's images and mine don't mesh perfectly. It's like motion sickness." He walked to his den and took his chair. Pia did the same with hers. Now Brianna talked to Tristan. "It's going to be a long wait. How about some solitaire?" "Perhaps we can connect with Tyrion and Compassion," Tristan said, sounding pleased. Edsel tuned them out and closed his eyes again. Now he saw the land of Xanth coursing by below. It was a patchwork of jungle, lake, and field. He realized that the legs of the giant must be between him and the land, but they were completely invisible, so it was like low-level flying. Soon they approached the boundary at the northwest region, what in Mundania was called the Florida Panhandle. The land came up. Gray was being set down. He turned and waved, probably to the departing giant. Maybe the giant waved back. Gray turned to look at the nearby sea. It was changing color from bluish to greenish. Then suddenly, Gray ran west, away from Xanth. Mundane foliage surrounded him. "Are you all right, Robata?" Gray inquired, patting his pocket. "I'm fading," she answered, "but I will not lose my magic entirely. Keep me near your ear so I can translate for you." Gray walked on. The scenery did not look like Florida. Edsel opened his eyes. "Are they in the right place? I don't recognize the landscape." Tristan looked up from his card game. They are in the land you call Italy, circa 1885, if I have your numbers correct.
1885, Pia exclaimed, opening her eyes. You mean like a century ago?
Perhaps I can clarify this, Justin said. In terms of the Xanth time they are visiting, it is about 75 years, when the evil magician Trent first transformed me into a tree for trying to oppose him. But when he was thereafter exiled, he emerged in Mundania of southern Europe near the end of the 19th century, your time. He returned to Xanth 20 years later and became king. Gray is following his route, as it is easier to do that than to establish a new temporal route.
Clear as mud, Pia said.
There is no fixed connection between Xanth and Mundania, Tristan said. A person can step from Xanth into any time of Mundania, and return into any time of Xanth, if he knows how. Thus, that is merely a stepping stone.
From Xanth now to Italy then, Edsel said. From Italy then to Xanth then. Only not exactly the same then.
That's close enough, Pia said, rolling her eyes.
Edsel closed his eyes and tuned in again. So did Pia.
Gray approached a settlement by the sea. He spoke gibberish to a native. The native responded.
Robata is speaking for him in his voice, Pia reported. He is holding her up near his face so it's not obvious. It's Italian. She's asking for the road to France.
You can understand Italian? Edsel asked, amazed.
No, I can understand Robata. She understands Italian.
Gray negotiated to get a horse to ride and set off. Mountains loomed ahead.
But this may take days, Edsel protested.
For him, yes, Tristan said. But when he returns here, he will do so within a day of his time of departure, so you will not be unduly delayed.
But how can I follow days, in hours?
You fast forward past the dull stuff, Brianna said.
This is weird, Pia said.
Ain't magic wonderful? Brianna said, laughing. Edsel tried it. Lo, suddenly he was looking at southern France. At least the mountains were behind, and the landscape looked vaguely French. In a moment, Pia confirmed it. Skipping ahead, they found Gray joining evil magician Trent's mundane army. Gray was able to do this because Trent didn't know him back then. In fact, it was before Gray had been delivered, so no one in Mundania could have known him. Edsel took a break. He stretched and walked out to join the others. They were playing quadruple solitaire with illusion cards, freely interfering with each other's layouts, and evidently having a great time. Justin and Brianna formed one team, and Tristan and Pewter the other, the troll mouse making the moves per the machine's printed instructions. Brianna looked up.
Oh, hi, Ed. Everything okay?
They're passing through Mundania, and there is no problem. In fact, it's dull. I'll be fast-forwarding soon. For sure. Brianna slapped an illusion card down across the layout. Trump! Angry swirls of color light crossed Pewter's screen, his way of showing frustration. Then they cleared. Double, Tristan said, putting down a card for the machine. Raise, Justin said, placing one of his cards. Hit me, Pewter's screen printed. Brianna laid down 3 cards. No. Tristan picked one up. Kiss me. Just what kind of solitaire is this? Edsel asked, baffled. It's one we invented, called Kiss Me Donkey, Brianna explained. It's sort of eclectic. So I see. Edsel still could not make head or tail of the play. You know, Computer could play better if he had a joystick and keyboard. Considering the nature of Xanth, those would probably give him joy and the key to new insights. Pewter was interested, so Edsel described those devices in greater detail, and the others saw about making them. He returned to his study and resumed tracking Gray. Pia remained in her chair with her eyes closed, either locked into the past or asleep. They marched east, back toward Italy. But Gray went ahead, because he needed to be in Xanth before Trent got there. He used his magic to nullify the deadly shield that was now there, and the familiar magic landscape returned. Robata came back to full animation. She was a golem, but used illusion to change her appearance and her reality adjustment to magnify her size. Now she resembled an elf, still much smaller than Gray, but able to keep up with him on her own. Etzel assumed that Gray looked like himself, but Robata now resembled an elfin Pia, quite pretty. They spent a night on the path to the North Village, as it was a fair hike from the border. The path was not enchanted, and there were dangers, but Gray nullified them. Robata was metallic in essence, and could hardly be hurt by routine monsters, but she was practicing the ways of living femininity, so as to be able to fool the Storm King. They found a mush room that was big enough. The mush was mostly on the outside, and the room mainly inside, so it worked well enough. They brought pies in, and Gray ate one while Robata emulated him. "I can take bites in my mouth, but can't keep them there," she said. "What should I do with them?"
Gray considered. "Maybe make spot illusions to conceal them, and set them down."
"But then there will be a growing pile of bites on the table."
He considered again. "Maybe make spot illusions of bites, and of bites missing from the pie."
"Yes," she agreed, pleased. She practiced, and soon had a reasonably realistic mode of eating. When the pie was finished, she quietly moved it elsewhere on the table, and let it revert to complete, as if it were a new one. "And my clothing," she said. "Do I have it right?"
"I'm not sure exactly what the elves of this time wear," Gray said. "But maybe you can represent yourself as one from a distant tree, with different conventions."
"Yes, I shall be Silica, a princess of the mineral elves." She shifted her outfit to a dark gray blouse and skirt.
"That should do,"
Gray agreed. "Now to be realistically female, how much here?" she asked, indicating her bosom.
"Well?"
"Say when it's right," she said.
Her bosom expanded. "Ah," he started, evidently uncertain how to handle this. It became full, then large, then huge, then so large it burst out of the blouse and threatened to fill the room. "Let's start over," Gray said quickly. The monstrous breasts vanished, and the slightly filled blouse reappeared. The bosom started expanding again. "When?" Gray said, stopping it at a reasonable magnitude. After that, they covered the legs, until she had a rather nice set under a tastefully brief skirt. "And don't show your—"
"I know," she said. "They freak men out." Then she reconsidered. "But I think I'd like to do that sometime."
"Not on this mission," he said firmly. "We can't risk mischief."
Gray slept in Etzel's window closed, but Piers continued. "She's experimenting with poses," she reported, breathing deeply, crossing her legs. "She doesn't sleep," he said, "so she has time to work things out." Pia opened her eyes and looked around. "What time is it in real life?" Brianna looked up from her card game. "Early evening. You've been at it a while." "Can we pick them up when we want to?" Pia asked. "Like in their morning, when it's our morning?" "Yes," Tristan said, playing a card. They seemed to be playing a new, different game of interactive solitaire, with Pewter using his new joystick to deal smiley face cards. Etzel decided not to inquire. "Does this suite have a bedroom?" Pia asked. A door appeared. "It does now," Tristan said. Pia got up and opened the door. "Is it private?" Tristan considered. "Technically, nothing is private in this cave. My master governs all of it, but apart from that context, it is private." Pia nodded. "Then come on, Ed." Etzel was glad to comply. He joined her in the bedroom and found it was very like their own bedroom at home. It was almost as if they were back in Mundania. "Do you know what Robata's doing now?" Pia asked as she joined him in bed. "No, my window is closed." "She's practicing wiles."
"But Gray's asleep."
"Yes, I think she knows better than to try them on him when he's awake. He's faithful to Ivy. But now she's pretending. She wants to be a real woman." "I suppose it's sort of sad, being an animate creature of metal." "Yes, she does have feelings. I can feel them. She knows she exists for a purpose, and that purpose isn't to be a normal woman. But because she has to emulate one, she has the emotions, and that becomes painful." "I never thought about the morality of making robots or golems before," he said. "But does seem cruel. Too bad she can't be real." "Grundy Golem became real," Maybe if she does a good job on this mission, she will be similarly rewarded. I hope so. Then Pia proceeded to put him into the kind of rapture only she could manage. In the morning they emerged from the bedroom to find that another bedroom had been formed for Justin and Brianna. Etzel wondered how far the girl had managed to take the former tree this time. He knew that Pia had been encouraging him, but old inhibitions died hard. He felt guilty for the thought, but would have loved to snoop on their nocturnal activity. Tristan appeared. "Is everything in order?" Etzel started to answer, then realized that the question was actually about the time travelers. He closed his eyes and tuned in. Gray and Robata were walking along the path. Yes, they seemed to be headed south after a safe night. Etzel and Pia had a mundane breakfast of cereal and fruit and cocoa. It was amazing how Pewter could shape reality within his cave. Then they tuned in again on the time travelers. They were approaching a female centaur who was bare-breasted in the fashion of her species. Now Etzel knew that Gray did notice such things, for the image remained firmly framed in his vision. "Hello," he said. "I am Gray Human, and this is my companion, Silica Elf." "I am Cassie Centaur," the centaur replied, "or if you prefer, Cassie Girl." She became a human woman, suitably clothed. "My parents suffered an encounter at a love spring, so I am a crossbreed." "My talent is minor prophecy," Gray said, completing his introduction. "Mine is to go in and out of the void." "That is remarkable," Gray said. "I would not care to go near the void, but I would have thought your talent would be the ability to change between your two forms." "No, that's inherent. Most crossbreeds assume aspects of both parents. I must be one or the other, in turn. So it is independent of talent. Some of the Murtaurs have talents, too." "The Murtaurs?" "They are quite rare, so it's not surprising you haven't encountered them. Centaur merfolk crossbreeds, with human heads and arms, equine bodies, and aquatic tails. I'm going to visit them now." "We wish you a good visit. We are going to the North Village to see the king." "You are on the right path. Proceed on south." They separated amicably and went their ways. Robata was pleased because her identity had not been challenged. Centaurs were intelligent, observant folk, so that was a good sign. Etzel took several small jumps forward, bypassing the hours of dull walking. Pia kept pace with him, so they wouldn't get out of phase with each other. Gray and Robata entered the North Village. This was where the Storm King lived, but before they approached the rather meager palace, they checked in with the village elders, Roland and Bianca. These were, Justin explained as he and Brianna emerged from their bedroom, the parents of Bink, who had recently been exiled from Xanth for lacking a magic talent. Gray and Robata needed an introduction to King Aeolus, and Roland and Bianca were the ones to do it. "I am a traveling man with the talent of minor prophecy," Gray said when Roland answered the door. "This is Silica of the Mineral Elves, whom I am protecting." Robata was in regular elf form, about a quarter the height of Gray, but proportioned exactly like a human woman, with not too much bosom. "She is interested in studying weather and would like to meet the Storm King, so we come to you, as village elders, to ask for an introduction to the king." Etzel opened his eyes. "Is this ethical?" he asked. "For not sure," Brianna said. "What's happening?" "Gray is claiming to have a talent of minor prophecy. This is the second time he has done so." "That is his cover story," Tristan said. "You will understand that they can under no circumstances tell the truth, for that would lead to immediate chaos as every person sought to know his personal future, and Xanth would be changed irredeemably. Neither can they avoid identifying themselves, for that could arouse suspicion. So they must have persuasive false identities." "But this is lying." Pia looked at him. "When did a lie ever stop you, Ed?" "What are you talking about?" "When you wanted to get a girl into bed." "That's different." "Perhaps this is not a fit subject for discussion at this time," Justin said. "Why not?" Brianna asked. "I'm interested. It's okay to lie when?" "I apologize," Etzel said. "I'm sorry I brought up the subject." "I guess lying in a good cause is okay," Brianna said doubtfully. "Oh," Pia said. "The end justifies the means?" "Well, the end of getting a girl into bed."
You have a point, Brianna said. It's not right.
But the alternative would be to completely change Xanth's present, Tristan said. Pia and Brianna looked at him.
Oh, that,
Brianna said. Edsel wanted to get off the subject. Why don't we agree that lying is wrong, but that what Gray and Robata are doing is role-playing? They must maintain their roles, as the truth would either be not believed or would have devastating consequences. The others considered, then exchanged nods. What is happening? Tristan asked. Edsel and Pia closed their eyes.
And the king banished him, Bianca was saying, because he couldn't demonstrate any magic.
Edsel repeated that to the others. She's talking about Bink, Justin said. He was believed to have no magic. Actually, he has magician-caliber magic, but it is indefinable. He will return, Gray said reassuringly. I can't tell exactly how or where, but I foresee his return, in good health, and acceptance in Xanth.
Oh, that's such a relief, Bianca said. Is she trusting or desperate? Pia asked.
Desperate, Justin said. By all accounts, she was a fine person and loving mother. Her talent was the replay. She could, in a spot area, set time back 5 seconds, so that a scene could be briefly replayed. It was very useful when someone misstepped or hit his thumb with a rock. Roland's talent was the freeze. He could make a person stop in place, not even breathing, until freed. As a couple, they could be formidable, but they never abused their powers. The appointment with the king was made. Edsel and Pia skipped ahead to that. They didn't seem to be able to return to any prior scenes, so learned to be cautious about fast-forwarding. But so far, there was no indication of any trouble. No one questioned the identity of the time travelers, and they were making no waves. But Edsel was uneasy. He knew that sometimes the simplest things could go drastically wrong. In this case, the wrongness could be extremely subtle and extremely unfortunate. He refused to be lulled into complacency. That afternoon, in the past, Robata got to meet Elis, the Storm King. He was an old man, feeble, and surely not much longer for kingship.
I am Silica of the Mineral Elves, Robata said, flashing her most winning smile. She was getting it down well. It almost lighted the room.
And who are you? Elis asked Gray. I am Gray, with the talent of minor prophecy. I am helping Silica find her way through the human kingdom. Justin nodded when Edsel reported that. Xanth elves associate with particular elm trees, and their strength is inversely proportional to their distance from their home trees, he said. They are super strong near their own elf elms, but very weak when they are too far from them. An elf maiden would need help in the human domain.
The king is inquiring their business with him,
Pia reported. Edsel tuned back in. Robata was answering.
I am studying weather as it affects our activities. Please demonstrate a storm for me.
The Storm King's answer was gruff. No.
But I need to observe weather magic so I can understand it.
My talent is not a parlor game, Elis said. I invoke it only when there is legitimate need. Robata argued, but the king would not budge. The truth is that his talent faded with age, Justin said. He seldom invoked it toward the end. Did you tell them that? Edsel asked. Oh, yes, they know, Tristan said. But the king still has some power, and she can analyze its nature when he uses it. Then my master will be able to duplicate it with full power. So they will do their utmost to get him to demonstrate it.
Get on it,
Pia said, her eyes closed. This is getting heavy. Edsel closed his eyes. A wiggle swarm to the south? The king was asking incredulously. There hasn't been one of those for decades. Nevertheless, I see one coming, Gray insisted. You could destroy it with a solid storm. Why should I believe the word of a stranger? Elis asked. Gray spread his hands. I can't prove that my prophecies are correct until they come true, but in the past they have been reasonably accurate. Well, if a wiggle swarm comes, we'll see about it, the king decided. I'm not at all sure a storm will blow wiggles away. They can drill right through stone. Edsel reported that, doing ongoing narrative as he listened. He was getting better at it. Pia corrected him on details, as she saw the same scene through Robada's eyes and ears.
That king may be old, but he's not stupid, Brianna remarked.
Then Gray found a prophecy that made an impression. I see evil magician Trent returning with an army to conquer Xanth.
Oops, Brianna said. If he warns the Storm King, won't the king stop the invasion, and Trent will never conquer Xanth, and all history be changed?
Not so, Justin said. Trent didn't take Xanth by force. Aeolus died, and they gave Trent the crown.
Oh, Brianna said ruefully. I keep forgetting that you lived Xanth history. You were there.
And you are here now, Justin said. You were well worth waiting for. The Black Wave girl tried her best to blush, with imperfect success. The Storm King seemed much more alert to this threat than the one from the Wiggles. He walked to the wall where a magic mirror hung. The border, he said. A picture formed in the mirror. It showed a group of men out beyond a shimmering border. They were setting up cages on the other side of that shimmer, which Edsel realized was the deadly magic shield that prevented anyone from crossing, before Trent took power and shut it down. There is something happening out there, Aeolus said. I had better prepare.
So will you demonstrate your talent?
Robada asked, favoring him with her most winning smile, and a rather nice flash of elfin bosom. Old and feeble as the king was, he was not completely immune to the wiles of lovely women. Yes, wait here. The king departed the chamber, through a door that opened magically to let him pass. Immediately Robada tried to follow, but the door balked her. Then Gray touched it, nullifying its magic, and they went through. Aeolus was opening a magic strongbox. He reached inside to lift something out, but his hands came up empty. Yet there was a faint sparkle. The king straightened up and turned, and saw Gray and Robada standing there. You saw, he said, chagrined. What did they see? Edsel asked, mystified. We don't know, Tristan said. This is new to my master. Then Gray caught on. Your soul is in that box, he said. But why? Robada asked. The king looked frightened but canny. I will tell you, if you will promise not to tell anyone else. Not within 50 years, Gray promised, and Robada agreed. He was aware that the information was being transmitted 57 years to the future. Also, spreading a truly significant secret might change Xanth history, and they couldn't afford that. That's good enough. Aeolus took a deep breath. He was standing up straighter and looked better, now that he had his soul with him. This is a solar cell, made by magician Yin-Yang centuries ago. It prevents aging and death for the person who stores his soul inside. I don't need to have my soul with me all the time, so I store it here so I won't die.
But you're already pretty old, Robada said.
Yes, I got this box only a year ago, and it can't undo the age I suffered before then. But I can remain my present age for a long time. Unfortunately, my talent remains with my soul, so when I need to invoke it, I must recover my soul for the occasion. So you're not really senile, Gray said, just soulless. That is correct. I pretend senility in order to avoid onerous tasks.
Well, demonstrate your talent, and we will depart and never see you again,
Robada said. Will a small storm do?
Certainly.
She smiled engagingly. Aeolus concentrated on the center of the room. In a moment a cloud formed. It thickened and swirled. Then a little bolt of lightning shot out, and there was a crack of thunder. A small rain shower followed. Wonderful, Robada exclaimed, clapping her little hands. Great demonstration. The storm dissipated. The Storm King walked back to the solar cell. Aeolus made a clutching motion at himself. Something sparkly lifted from his body. He crammed it into the box and pushed down the lid, He had put away his soul. He turned toward them. "Now you will go and be silent," he said. "Yes," Grey agreed. They left the chamber with the king, so this time Grey did not need to nullify the door. Then Aeolus bid them farewell, and they walked out of the palace. "You got what you need?" Grey asked Robata. "Yes. Now I understand the secret of weather magic. My master will be able to duplicate it." "Then walk with me, and do not argue." "Argue?" "When I do something surprising." Perplexed, Robata agreed. They walked north, out of the north village, but the moment they were out of sight of it, Grey picked her up and stepped off the path into the brush. "Revert to golem size," he whispered. She did, and he put her in his pocket. Then he forged on through the brush at right angles to the path. There were needle cactuses, thornberries, and tangled trees in that trackless jungle, but he nullified them as he passed through. "What is he doing?" Pia asked. "This is a mystery to us," Tristan said. "He is supposed to bring them right home." Grey circled the north village, bearing west and then south. There he found a small, little-used path, and followed it farther south. As the day grew late, he found a thick thicket between two thin thinnets, and used his nullifying magic to penetrate to the center, where he was well protected and effectively invisible. "Now what is this all about?" Robata inquired in his ear. "You didn't need to go to this much trouble to get me alone, you know." Grey surely smiled. "The Storm King is without a conscience." "He seemed nice enough to me." "The conscience resides with the soul. The soulless have no decent limits, as with the demons or the animated inanimate." "Now wait a moment. I'm animated inanimate." "And so you have no conscience. Fortunately, you have not yet discovered how dastardly you could be, if you thought of it. I hope you will continue to act in a decent manner." "You mean I can't seduce you?" she asked, disappointed. "That's right. A woman of conscience would not try to seduce a married man." "But why not?" "That comes under the heading of conscience. To a person of conscience, that which is feasible is not necessarily that which is appropriate." "I don't understand." "Precisely. But if you do well, one day you may become real and have a soul, as Grundy Golem does. You will want to be prepared for its limitations." Robata considered. "You're right. I do want to become real. So I will study conscience, now that I have studied weather. But you will have to help me, because my master never said anything about it." "Computer is animated inanimate, too, and so without conscience. Fortunately, there are some limitations established in his programming. What about Tristan?" "He's funny. He won't cheat at cards, even when it seems he could, and he doesn't do anything illicit, even when he's away from our master's control." "Tristan has a conscience. In fact, he has one of the finest consciences of his kind, and is a fine model to emulate." "You mean I should act like him?" "Yes, with due allowance for your gender." She sighed. "This will be horribly restrictive." "It's worth it." "So why did you bring me here, since it wasn't for a illicit purpose?" "The Storm King wants to hold on to power as long as he possibly can. He doesn't know he is going to die soon, making his retention of the kingship moot. We discovered a secret of his. He will seek to eliminate us." "But we promised to keep that secret 50 years. "He judges us by himself. He expects us to break that promise. So he will seek to eliminate us before we do so." "How can he do that?" "By arranging to have us ambushed and killed on our way home." "But he can't kill me. I'm not alive." "He doesn't know that. In any event, he can have you taken apart and scattered." Robata nodded. "That would do it, especially here in the past, where my master can't recover the pieces." "So we must hide from him. We arrived at the north village from the north, and departed it to the north. He will assume that we live somewhere north, and will send his scouts out to intercept us. They will hardly think to look well away from the paths amidst the dangerous jungle." "And when they don't find us to the north, they will spread their net wider." "Yes, but they will have little chance to find us if we are careful, and if we stay well ahead of them. So we must postpone our departure from Xanth until the search dies out. But won't that mess up our return to our own time?
No, we'll re-enter Xanth just when we should. This merely prolongs our stay here.
What of the observers?
They will have to fast forward by most of this. I regret inconveniencing them, but I had not anticipated dealing with a soulless king.
What's for supper?
Gray looked around. I didn't think of grabbing any food before coming here.
I can go out and find something for you. I'm small enough and hard enough to handle this thicket.
Why should you bother? You don't feel hunger yourself. She shrugged.
Isn't that what a person of conscience would do?
Yes, but...
So I'm learning.
She climbed down his shirt, dropped to the ground, and went out in search of food. This is getting interesting, Pia said, opening her eyes. Let's take a break, then fast forward. Agreed, Edsel said. For though the time travelers had spent a day in Xanth, the observers had spent much less time. In fact, their times were not synchronized. The two in the present could go through any amount of past adventure as fast as they wanted, by skipping ahead. But they did not want to skip too much, too freely, lest they miss something vital and be unable to backtrack to see it. They missed nothing during their breaks, but could miss everything during an ill-advised fast forward. Robata spoke of seducing Gray, Pia said. He talked her out of it. But is it physically possible? I mean, she's a golem made from metal. She doesn't even have a place. It is physically possible, Tristan said, for two reasons. First, she can change her own reality, to an extent, so can form a place. Second, metal is no necessary bar to such activity, just as the fact that my girlfriend Tyrion is a literal mouse is no bar when we meet physically. Magic makes us compatible. It's a variation of the accommodation spells the elves and imps use when they wish to associate with large folk on an equal basis. Even all metal folk, like the Brassies, can be remarkably soft when they wish to be. So Robata has that ability, too. Pia seemed somewhat taken aback. Golems have more potential than I thought, she said. That surprise was true for Edsel, too. Even seemingly simple forms of magic were turning out to have intriguing aspects. In due course, they resumed the observation. Edsel was finding it increasingly easy to identify with Grey Murphy, who seemed like a fine person. He suspected that Pia was finding the same with Robata, who had arranged to look like her in her elfin form, and in her golem form, too. That was a considerable compliment, especially because it seemed to be unconscious. Gray and Robata continued south to the Magic Dust Village. This settlement, Justin explained, had lost most of its men to the call of the nearby siren. A few men had been grabbed by a tangle tree near the path and rescued in injured condition. But the injured ones kept trying to follow the siren song. The village was run by a tough female troll named Trolla. A troll, Pia said. But aren't you a troll, Tristan? Yes. We are not all bad, just as full humans are not. For sure, Brianna agreed. No species is all bad, not even zombies. Gray and Robata joined the villagers, she now in her natural golem form, because the king's men would be looking for an elf. When the siren sang again, Gray was unmoved. How do you resist the siren's call? Trolla asked. It's my talent, Gray said. I can nullify. He has selective deafness, Robata interrupted. He hears only what he wants to hear. Gray, realizing that he had almost made a careless mistake, shut up. Edsel was attuned to his mind and could follow his thoughts with increasing facility. My word, an old wife of the village said. I'd swear my husband and all my children had that talent. Gray considered and concluded that he would not be changing history if he spared the men from the tree. He went to the tree alone at night and touched its trunk. When it tried to grab him, he nulled it. You will never again molest a man following the siren song, he informed it. Otherwise I will do this. He nulled much of the trunk for a moment. The tree got the message. It left the men alone. But it remained dangerous to women. Fortunately, they had the sense not to go near it. They assumed that the siren had made a deal with the Tangler so that she could capture more males.
Gray and Robata remained a few days at the Magic Dust Village, but Gray became increasingly uncomfortable because there were so many women there who missed the company of men. They were becoming rather obvious about their attraction to him, and some were quite alluring. Lovely music and singing filtered through the forest.
"I think we should go see just what is happening with the siren," Gray said.
"You are succumbing to her song," Trolla said, alarmed. He smiled.
"No, I can shut it out. But as long as the siren remains, there is a danger to the village. Maybe I can talk her out of singing."
"That would be nice," Trolla said. "Better yet, we would like to have our men back." "For sure," Robata agreed. The others laughed when Piers reported that. They followed the path through the jungle, Robata sitting on Gray's shoulder and holding on to his ear. The motion of his body caused her to lean outward and inward, her bosom colliding with his ear every so often. "That's not accidental," Piers murmured professionally. "She's keeping her options open."
"Keeping her what's open?" Etzel asked.
The others smiled. They were getting used to him.
"Of course we can't really change the siren," Gray told Robata. "That would alter history. But we can talk to her, and perhaps make things easier for the Magic Dust villagers."
"They seem like nice folk," she agreed. "I could study conscience with them."
"You could indeed. They are doing a difficult job, dispersing the magic dust so that it doesn't pile up too thickly and distort the magic of Xanth. All types of people are working together in harmony, all motivated by their sense of duty. An excellent model."
It was a good path. It led them toward the sound of the singing, to the shore of a small lake. There was an island in the middle. On the island's tiny beach was a stool, and on the stool sat a lovely female figure, facing away from them, playing a dulcimer. There was a bleat, and suddenly a sheep-like animal charged toward them.
"That's a battering ram," Gray said. "Dodge it."
"But you could nullify it."
"I believe it has an encounter with Bink, not long hence. I don't want to change that encounter,
lest history change," she concluded. "Now I understand." The ram came at them. Gray jumped nimbly to the side, and it ran right on by. Before it could break and turn, it collided with a pineapple tree. A pineapple dropped, detonating under the ram's tail, and shrapnel flew out. The ram, reasonably battered, ran on. The music continued. "It has a pretty melody," Robata said, "but I don't find it compelling."
"I do," Gray said, "but I can nullify its magical component. That is the siren."
They found a path across the water and followed it toward the figure. The path faded behind them, leaving open water. It was one way. The siren heard them and turned, ceasing her playing and singing. She had hair like flowing sunshine and a tail like flowing water. Her bare breasts were spectacular.
"She can summon me any time," Etzel breathed.
"Well, you're an idiot male," Piers retorted. She pursed her lips. "But she does have formidable architecture."
"The siren is 17 years old at this stage," Justin remarked. "She has a teenaged figure."
"That's the best kind," Brianna said.
"Indubitably." "You must be the siren," Gray said.
"Why, so I am, handsome man," the mermaid said, inhaling. "Are you going to stay a while?"
"I already have company,"
he said, indicating Robata, who remained on his shoulder. "I'm sure the golem girl can share you. What can she offer that I can't?" "Legs," Robata said, flexing hers. "Really?" The siren drew her tail from the water, and it split and became a fine, bare pair of legs. She stood, setting her dulcimer on the stool.
"We came only to talk," Gray said quickly. "You seem to have been causing some mischief in the neighborhood."
"But all I do is divert myself by singing and playing my dulcimer," the siren protested. "It gets so lonely."
"Couldn't you go elsewhere to divert yourself?"
"No. Our parents left me and my sister, the Gorgon, here, making us promise never to leave the lake. So I remain, hoping for company. But it never remains." "Gorgon?" Robata asked. "That's her name. She's lovely, like me, and has almost as sweet a disposition. but we got tired of each other's company. I mean, we're both female, so she went to another island nearby. The trouble is, though I play fair and let men go on to meet her too, she never sends them back. It's generating some stress between us.
You don't know why? Gray asked.
Well, I never thought she was selfish, but I'm beginning to wonder.
They are truly innocent, Justin explained. When they reached the age of...
Stoic interest, Brianna supplied.
Just so. At that stage, their magic talents also matured, and they could no longer be safely kept at home. So they were deposited on the islands of the lake to fend for themselves, which unfortunately they were more than capable of doing, despite their innocence. So then you lure more men with your music, Grace said, and the same thing happens.
She pouted prettily. Yes, I would like to marry and settle down, but I have to let them meet my sister, because we are supposed to share evenly, and then I lose them.
Well, I may not be an authority because I'm from Mundania, Grace said carefully, but I think there are better ways to meet men. Perhaps I can persuade your sister to send one back to you.
She clapped her hands. That would be wonderful. I have so much to give. If only there was someone to take.
She's not fooling, Edsel commented. That bare figure.
We know,
Pia snapped. She tended to get snappish when encountering women with fuller bosoms than hers. Gray and Robata followed the one-way path onto the Gorgon's island.
What are they up to? Pia asked. That creature's dangerous.
I believe he wants to persuade the Gorgon not to turn every man to stone, Tristan said. But this is chancy, because the Gorgon significantly affects Xanth's history, especially after she encounters Magician Humphrey, and this must not be changed.
Gray knows that, Brianna said. He lives at the Good Magician's castle. He knows the Gorgon personally. Then she'll recognize him, Brianna protested.
No, dear, Justin said. She does not know him at this time. Later she may remember him, but that's much closer to the present, and shouldn't have much effect. Still, I confess I am not at ease about this encounter.
Pia said. The golem's on it.
Is this wise? Robata asked as they walked.
The Gorgon will marry the Good Magician after he makes her deadly face invisible.
I won't interfere with that, of course, he said. I merely want to unstone some of the men from the Magic Dust Village so they can return there to work and comfort their women.
The siren song will just lure them away again.
True, but at least they will have some time with their families, making things better without changing history significantly.
I think you're risking paradox,
Robata said. No, I think it will be all right.
In fact, I think you have been foolishly smitten by the lovely innocence of the siren, and want to see the Gorgon in her teenage youth.
What makes you think that?
I am objective as only a machine can be, and female besides. Turn aside, Gray.
I think she's right, Pia said. He is, after all, a man. There's only so much bare female flesh they can handle before their foolish minds overload. The others looked at Edsel. I fear she's right, too, he said. That siren is one luscious creature, and she has made it plain she wants a man to love. Gray has lost his objectivity. Do we have to send in help? Tristan asked nervously. Not yet, Edsel decided. It hasn't happened yet. Maybe he'll come to his senses before he does something really stupid. But Gray demurred, forging onward. He seemed to be beyond reason. Edsel winced, watching it. Men were foolish about women. This was the danger they hadn't anticipated. Remember, Robata said, perhaps resigned to likely disaster.
Sight of the Gorgon's mere face turns men to stone. All stone, not just one little part of them the way the sight of other women does.
She hugged his head, pressing her bosom against the side of his face. She's trying to distract him, Pia said, and for once I agree. If she seduces him, there won't be a change in history. I'll be careful, Gray said carelessly. They passed through a region of the lake where tall trees grew up through the water, forming a natural screen. They rounded a turn, and something moved. Gray instantly exerted his talent, and accidentally nullified the path across the water. He fell in with a splash. Robata laughed, clutching onto his hair.
Serves you right, she said. Maybe this will shock you into some common sense.
You're right, Gray said, treading water in a more conventional man. I've got no business meeting the Gorgon. What was I thinking of? He was swimming now, perforce.
Maybe this,
Robata said, pressing her bosom against his ear again.
Or this.
She spread her knees.
Swim to shore, and we'll get out of here.
Right! He swam to the nearest shore. A hand reached down to help him climb out and up the steep bank. He looked at his rescuer, and turned to stone. Pia screamed. Ethel fell off his chair. Gray had been caught by surprise, not thinking to nullify any more magic, and had accidentally gazed at the face of the Gorgon. The ultimate disaster had happened. 11. Fantasy. After a moment, Pia recovered enough to help Edsel gasp out the nature of the catastrophe. Gray? Stoned? Tristan repeated, stunned. We never anticipated this.
For sure,
Brianna said, not smiling. She looked as white as her brown face could get.
We were so concerned about him changing history. We never thought of how history could change him. What'll we tell Ivy? She'll be poison ivy when she hears about this, even when it's not the time of the month.
Women in Xanth have times of the month? Pia asked.
I mean, with the stork and all.
Brianna glanced to make sure no males were close enough to hear.
Between storks, they can get out of sorts about once a month, she said. Men don't know. But what I really meant was, I know, this is awful. She loves Gray.
Do not panic, computer screen printed. Stoning is not permanent.
It isn't?
Pia asked, foolish hope flaring. All the stoned men recover in the subsequent time of no magic, Justin said. That's a relief, Edsel said, looking more than relieved. I thought he was dead. I will have to go rescue him, Tristan said with a grim determination. When I get him out of Xanth, the magic will relent, and he will be restored. He is not dead, merely enchanted. Pia grabbed on to something.
What's this time of no magic?
It occurred about a year later, Justin said, when Bink mistakenly freed the demon Xanth, and the demon departed, taking his magic with him.
But the demon Xanth is still here, Pia protested, in the form of...
It was temporary, Justin said. The demon returned after about a day, and the magic was restored. But the stoned men remained whole. The Gorgon spell had been interrupted, and could not restore itself. It was an incidental benefit of a very awkward period.
Then,
Pia said, working it out,
then all they have to do is wait for that, and Gray will be all right.
The others circulated a surprised glance. She is correct, Pewter's screen printed. No rescue mission is necessary at this time. Tristan looked twice as relieved as Edsel had been. It was clear that he did not want to travel into the past and risk disturbing history himself. Yet he had been ready to. The troll had courage.
Quick, fast forward, Brianna suggested. See if they work it out themselves.
No, Justin said. Resume at exactly that time to see how Robata reacts. That may be important.
Yes.
Pia shut her eyes and tuned in. It was obvious that Edsel couldn't, for now.
Hello,
Robata said. The Gorgon stared at her. Oh,
I thought you were a man. Not exactly, Robata said. I was climbing on this statue of a man. Maybe you confuse us. That must have been the case. I thought I saw a swimming man. Our eyes do sometimes deceive us, Robata said. Is there another path away from here? Yes, that way, the Gorgon pointed.
Robata took the path and made her way back towards the magic dust village.
She shows no regret at Gray's fate, Pia reported. She's just going about her business.
She's a golem, without a soul, Tristan reminded her. She can emulate caring, but can't actually experience it. Since she is alone, she must see no reason to emulate it. Robata reached the village.
He got stoned.
I don't understand, Trolla said.
He made a mistake and will not be returning. So I have come to join your community.
You are welcome, Trolla said, provided you are willing to work hard.
Yes.
So Robata settled in her natural golem form, and helped the villagers disperse the magic dust. She worked hard, and soon was accepted by the others. She did them favors when she could, and became increasingly decent as she studied the others to learn the ways of it. Pia opened her eyes. What I don't get is why Gray went so crazy there toward the end. I mean, I thought he was a pretty level-headed married man.
He is, Justin said. But the siren song, actually it's her dulcimer that carries the magic, is among the more remarkable lures of Xanth. Gray surely underestimated its power to affect him.
And perhaps rationalized to believe that he remained in control, Tristan said. Men do that.
For sure, Brianna agreed. The biggest part of the adult conspiracy is that women are the true rulers of Xanth.
That song was pretty alluring, Edsel said. If I'd been in control, I'd have gone to her right away. But that wasn't all. When she made legs, they were really something.
Oh?
Pia inquired, mildly annoyed. I've got legs. She hoisted her skirt to better display them. And those bare breasts, Edsel continued. Pia was moderately annoyed. I have breasts. She pulled her blouse tight. And that touching sweet innocence. Pia was silent and really annoyed. Brianna stepped in.
Well, we girls have sweet innocence until we get corrupted by men.
Indubitably,
Justin agreed. Pia smiled to herself. It was clear that he was the relatively innocent one in that relationship. Had we known that they would encounter the siren, we would have prepared them better, Tristan said. But that was not on the schedule. Obviously, the siren did affect Gray somewhat, enough to distort his judgment. Robata tried to dissuade him, but males in that state can be difficult to dissuade. Like alcohol, Edsel said. The one person in the group who thinks he hasn't taken too much is the drunk. Let's hope that Robata does the right thing, Tristan said. To that they all agreed, as Pia closed her eyes and fast-forwarded. A year passed. Then 5 travelers came, searching for the source of magic. There was the good magician Humphrey, looking the same as always. There was his son, Crombie, in the form of a griffin. There was Chester, a powerful centaur. There was Bink, who was Ivy's grandfather. And there was Grundy Golem, not yet made real. The villagers welcomed them with open arms, wings, and whatever else offered. Nymphs, sprites, and buxom human maids surrounded Bink. Fairies, elves, gnomes, and mignonettes mobbed Humphrey. Centaur fillies rubbed shoulders with Chester. 2 griffin cows attended Crombie Griffin. And Robata went after Grundy Golem.
But isn't he married to Rapunzel?
Pia asked, disturbed. Not at this time, Justin said. Rapunzel is locked in an ivory tower on the Gold Coast, I believe. It will be several years before Grundy rescues her. He is at this stage without marital encumbrance.
Without what?
Brianna inquired dangerously.
A figure of speech,
Justin said hastily.
I know what it means. You think marriage is an encumbrance?
I did not mean to imply that. I merely... Robata is having a ball, Pia reported.
She's kissing Grundy, and he's kissing her back.
They are the only 2 golems in Xanth, I think, Tristan said, so they may be entitled to celebrate.
They certainly are celebrating, Pia said. You're right, she does have a place,
and she's getting pretty soft.
Oh, phooey, Brianna said. I can't keep mine mad while they're doing that. Come here, Justin.
Pia noted the girl's ways with a certain professionalism. If she hadn't succeeded in seducing her man yet, she was bound to accomplish it soon. It made Pia more interested in doing something with Edsel, for all that there was by now little novelty in it. But now was not the time, not when there was a better show on. Pia watched the activity of the golems with some interest. Robata had evidently done some thinking on the matter, and was straightforward in her approach. She continuously complimented Grundy, and showed him flesh, which she crafted to be extremely well proportioned, and she eagerly acceded to his every notion.
Yet it seemed that he was using her too, because he had no more soul than she did. The result was a rather uninhibited session that surely would have alerted any golem storks in the vicinity. Then the siren's song came again. All the males perked up, listening. "It is the siren!" a fairy screamed. The women sang, trying to drown out the summoning sound, knowing the effect it had on males. But it was not to be denied. The males drew away and headed for the sound. They passed right by the tangle tree, which let them be, until Crombie Griffin, who was then a woman-hater, balked and pecked at the tree. That led to an amazing encounter. "They are fighting the tangle tree," Pia reported. "Magician Humphrey is using his magic against it, and the village women have gotten courage and are coming with torches. Robata is among them. Oh, this is a grade A fracas."
"A tragedy," Justin said. "That poor tree."
The Tangler was a fearsome opponent, but the combined force of men, women, and magic was too much for it, and it was destroyed. But the siren's song sounded again, and the men resumed their march toward it, to the women's great disappointment. "What happens to them?" Pia asked, her curiosity aroused. "I can't tell, because Robata remains with the village."
"This is known to history," Justin said. "They passed the battering ram and the pineapple tree. Then—" He paused.
"What happened?" Edsel asked.
Justin resumed, reluctantly. "Chester shot the siren through the heart."
"But she was no threat to them," Pia protested. "The good magician had healing elixir," Tristan said.
"Yes," Justin said. As it turned out, the men concluded that the siren was not a menace to them after they destroyed her magic dulcimer. They gave her elixir, restoring her, and spent the night there. Then they went on to see the Gorgon. The good magician was able to handle her by making her face invisible. They liked each other, right from the first.
"He had great power of magic, and she had great power of beauty," Tristan said. "That is a feasible combination."
"Thereafter they,"
Justin resumed. "Oh, I see," Pia said, closing her eyes and fast-forwarding. "They returned to the magic dust village. But though the villagers welcomed the men, they did not stay. They accepted a local guide and pushed on into the region of madness. Robata remained at the village. After further adventures, summarized by Justin, the men reached the demon Xanth. Then, "Robata's finally moving," Pia reported. "She's following the trail to the siren and Gorgon, though both of them have lost their powers." "She anticipates the time of no magic," Tristan said. "Now if she just does the right thing." Robata made her way to the Gorgon, who had not yet made up her mind what to do. "Things are going to become very strange," Robata told the Gorgon. "For a day there will be no magic. Then there will be magic again, and your power will be restored. Your face will be visible again, and as time passes you will be able to stone women and plants as well as men." "But I don't want to stone anyone," the Gorgon protested, shedding invisible tears. "Once the good magician made me understand what I was doing, I was appalled." "Then you must go to Mundania, where you will have no magic power," Robata said. "Mundania," the Gorgon repeated, horrified. "It's the only way. Maybe we can guide you there, when the magic returns." "I don't know," the Gorgon said. "Everything I know is here." "What do you have here?" "You can't interact with any man, and the women are not likely to be friendly. Go to Mundania where you can live in peace until you decide what else to do with your life." "I suppose so," the Gorgon agreed doubtfully. "But I already know what I want to do with my life. I want to marry Magician Humphrey." "Then go to Mundania, mature some, figure things out, and return when you're ready." "I shall," the Gorgon agreed with sudden decision. "When the magic stops, all these statues will return to life," Robata said, "and I will lose much of mine. I am stuffed with magic dust, so I will retain some animation, but I'll need Grey Murphy, so I will join him now." She found Grey's statue and climbed up to perch on its shoulder. She waited. Pia fast-forwarded. Suddenly the scene changed. "It's become a blur," she said.
That must be the time of no magic, Tristan said. It came suddenly, and even the magic dust lost most of its potency when the demon Xanth left the area entirely. So Robata may be worse off than she was in Mundania. She is, Piers said, but she's hanging on. Gray Murphy recovered. He found himself at the edge of the lake, his legs still in water. But I can't connect, Edsel said. Because there is no magic, Tristan said. We are dependent on Robata's limited awareness. Robata clung weakly to Gray's head. Time, no magic, she gasped without breath. Help me, Gorgon. She collapsed.
I was stoned,
Gray exclaimed, catching on. He put Robata in his pocket, where she was able to peek dimly out. Mostly, she just listened. Men were milling around, the other restored statues. Fortunately, they didn't know what had happened to them, or they would have gone after the Gorgon with mayhem in mind. She was nevertheless frightened of them. Gray put his arm around her.
Come with me. We need to get somewhere else.
Out of Xanth, Robata said faintly.
Too long a trip, Gray murmured to her. Too dangerous. There will be crazed beasts all around.
Then find somewhere safe, she said. He pondered.
Maybe I can reach Computer's cave. That's safe.
But paradox, she said.
I don't think so. I don't exist in this time, and Pewter can keep a secret.
Robata evidently lacked the strength to protest further. She just watched from the pocket. Gray and the Gorgon forged through the jungle. Everywhere, trees were drooping and animals were suffering. They had never before experienced the absence of magic. Gray would not be able to stop them by nullifying their magic, but they were too distracted to be a menace to him, other than accidentally. Pia fast-forwarded until they reached the cave. Pewter was inert. He could not animate without magic. Gray and the Gorgon, having walked most of a night and day, lay down on the floor of the cave and slept. It was cold, and they had no blanket, so they held each other for warmth. After a time, Robata stirred. She hauled herself from Gray's pocket. She pulled a sodden handkerchief out after her. She crawled across to the Gorgon and laid the handkerchief across her face. The Gorgon woke. What? The magic returning, Robata said. Cover face. Oh! The Gorgon spread the handkerchief. The spell of invisibility had been banished by the absence of magic, and would not be mended by the magic's return. Then the magic returned. Computer came to life, his screen lighting. Gray Murphy's eyes opened, and he stared full into the handkerchief.
What?
Look away, Robata cried with renewed strength. Gorgon! He did so with alacrity. Robata had just saved him from getting stoned again. He got up and faced Pewter's screen.
Change reality, he said urgently. Make the Gorgon's face invisible.
Who are you? The screen demanded.
I will explain. It's important. Null the Gorgon first.
Grudgingly, Pewter did. The Gorgon's threat disappeared, and she returned Gray's hanky.
Now I will tell you the truth, Gray said. But you must forget, and make the Gorgon forget, after we leave. I will tell you why.
Stranger has much nerve. Then Gray told Pewter why. That's the first time I've seen a machine surprised, Pia commented.
Now, will you help us leave Xanth safely? Gray asked.
Yes. Then I will seal off this memory unit until you invoke it in your time.
Good. Now we could use some food and better clothing.
Pewter generated a well-stocked table of food, and they fell greedily too. Robata talked with Pewter, explaining how he had made her in the future, and providing details of their mission Gray had skipped. Then 2 more people arrived at Pewter's cave. They were bedraggled, having evidently struggled through the non-magical jungle most of the way before the magic returned. One was a middle-aged man, the other a rather pretty young woman. They stood blinking at the gloom. Gray looked at them and froze.
I forgot, he whispered. We must get away from here.
The Gorgon and Robata looked at him. Why? The Gorgon asked. Aren't they people seeking refuge, like ourselves?
Yes. but they are my parents. His talent is to make things go wrong, and they just went wrong for us."
"Oh no," Robata said. "Paradox."
The man heard them.
"There are people here," he said, surprised, "and food."
The two of them lunged to the table, too hungry to resist. Gray looked as if he were going to faint. Then Robata came to the rescue.
"Pewter can erase the memory," she said.
Gray sighed with sheer relief.
"Yes." "Hello," the man said. "We are two strangers in need of sustenance. May we join you?" "Yes," Gray said. "We shall talk. Then Computer will help us all go to Mundania and erase your memories of this meeting."
"Why?" the woman asked, around a mouthful of pie.
"Because this is Robata, a golem from the future."
Robata smiled and inclined her head.
"And you are Magician Murphy and Sorceress Vodney."
The magician leaped to his feet.
"How do you, a stranger, know that?" he demanded. "Because I am your son you just signaled the stork for, Gray Murphy."
Both of them stared at him.
"How can this be?" the man demanded. "I am also from the future, on a mission to what is my past. I will be delivered to you in Mundania and grow up with you before we all return to Xanth."
"We can't be in Xanth," Vodney said. "They would put us back in the brain coral's pool we just escaped."
"You will be pardoned and become productive citizens of Xanth, and I will marry a princess. Until I undertake this mission 56 years from now."
They doubted, but slowly they came to believe.
"My son!"
Vodney exclaimed, coming to hug Gray. It was odd, because she was slightly younger than he.
"That's so touching,"
the Gorgon said, blowing her invisible nose. Robata turned to Magician Murphy.
"If I were real, would I be shedding a tear now?"
Murphy brought out a handkerchief and wiped off her wet face.
"Yes."
The scene blurred. Pia had to open her eyes so she could wipe her own face.
"But you hardly know Gray Murphy," Brianna said, "and you never met his folks." "It's like a wedding," Pia said. "You just have to cry."
Soon she returned to the observation. Gray, Robata, and the Gorgon had retreated behind a screen, and the memory of Magician Murphy and Vodney had evidently been wiped. The two bedraggled figures stood at the entrance to the chamber.
"Greetings, intruders."
"Who are you?" Murphy demanded.
"I am Computer. You are now in my power."
Actually, that was no sure thing, because Murphy's talent was to make things go wrong. But the two worked out a deal. Pewter would help them get safely out of Xanth if they gave him their just-ordered son. They agreed. Then Pewter put them into temporary stasis and addressed the others.
"Gray, you can and will guide them safely out."
"I can and will," Gray agreed. "Otherwise I would jeopardize my own existence."
He glanced around.
"I will guide the Gorgon out, too."
"Yes, I will now wipe her memory."
"No,"
the Gorgon cried.
"Please, I beg of you. I promise never to tell. Let me remember this wonderful scene and the way Magician Gray has helped me."
Pewter paused.
"It makes sense," Robata said. "She will be in Mundania and later will return to marry the good magician, who knows everything anyway. So it shouldn't make any difference."
"Agreed."
"Oh, thank you," the Gorgon cried. "And thank you, Robata. I will remember this favor."
She paused, considering.
"But never tell."
Then they organized for the trip to Mundania. Gray, Robata, and the Gorgon made an entry and were introduced to Magician Murphy and Vodney as their guides to Mundania. The party of 5 set off. The walk took several days, but was without event. They took the invisible bridge across the Gap Chasm and followed the trail north through the North Village. They disguised themselves, and no one recognized them. When they reached the border, Gray did not have to nullify the deadly shield. It had been taken down on orders of King Trent. But they forgot one thing: to tune in the color of the water of the sea near the border. So they did not come out where Trent and his army had been, but in a different time and region of Mundania.
"That's all right," Gray said. "The border interface automatically registers you as you pass through it,
and at such time as any of you return, you will return to the same time in Xanth that you left, except that it will be as much later in Xanth as the time you spend in Mundania." He did not explain about the time-traveling aspect. He and Robata were a special case. The Gorgon's face reappeared as they left the magic. She was just as pretty as her sister the siren, and had just as good a figure.
"That's all right," she said. "I will make do."
They ascertained that this was the region they had passed through before, that spoke Italian.
"I can teach you a few words,"
Robata said. The Gorgon considered. Then she smoothed her skirt and inhaled.
"I will pretend to be a mute girl in need of a good man's protection. Do you think that will work?"
Gray considered her statuesque face and figure. "I believe it will. Still—"
"Thank you."
She walked away into the heart of drear Mundania. Godney nodded.
"She will surely succeed."
"Now, where do the two of you wish to be?" Gray inquired. "There are different sections of Mundania, speaking different languages and having different customs." They considered. "You seem like an honest young man," Magician Murphy said. He no longer knew Gray as his son because of the memory wipe, but they had spent several compatible days together. "Take us to a region you feel will be good for us." Gray paused, and Pia knew why. He didn't dare change his own history. Robata whispered in his ear,
"Where you lived."
So he watched the changing color of the sea, and brought them to the region and time within a year of where he had been delivered, which was 14 years after the Gorgon's time, and on another continent where English was spoken. The stork might find it a challenge to make a delivery outside of Xanth, but history indicated that it would succeed. Gray explained the problem of language, and Robata told them a few useful words so they could get started. "As I understand it," Gray said, "when Xanthians go to Mundania, they are not challenged. The Mundanes seem to believe that they have always been there, but they do need to learn the conventions." "He did not say where he learned that," Justin remarked, "but it was surely from his parents, the very ones he is now addressing." They came to a crossroads. 3 roads led away from them. Murphy and Bodney took one, and Gray and Robata took another. But Bodney hung back a moment.
"Thank you. We will name our son after you," she called.
Startled, Gray didn't answer. "Thank you," Robata called back in his voice, and nudged him with her knee so that he got moving. They were at the fringe of magic, so she had fair animation. "That's playing it close," Etzel commented. "I think we might find a paradox hidden somewhere in there, if we looked hard enough." End of Side 7. Looked hard enough. 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 End of Side 7.